the New Rochelle PTA Council-sponsored Board of Education Candidates Forum. The PTA Council serves as the governing body that supports all our local PTA units. Our mission is to strengthen and empower our units by providing training and leadership development, coordinating communication among units, facilitating and engaging in community-wide projects that go beyond the scope of a single unit, and unifying planning efforts to help address broader issues that impact our entire community. As part of our public service commitment, the PTA Council is proud to continue the tradition of hosting this forum as a nonpartisan platform. We believe that informed citizens are engaged citizens, and engaged citizens work toward better schools and a stronger community. For years, the PTA Council has worked to promote engagement, transparency, and informed decision-making within our school community. One of our most important goals is to support families by ensuring they have access to clear and unbiased information, especially during critical moments like this upcoming Board of Education election. With the voting taking place on May 20th, we see tonight's forum as a vital opportunity for our community to hear directly from the individuals who seek to lead and represent our schools. Our mission is to empower voters, parents, educators, and community members with the knowledge they need to make informed choices for the future of our district. All of the questions you'll hear tonight have come directly from our local PTA units. We thank you for your participation and commitment to our schools. I am joined tonight by some of the amazing members of our executive board. Our president-elect, Mary Monzone, will serve as co-moderator. Brooke Muller, our PTAC treasurer, will go over tonight's format and help to moderate. And Jana Botenston, PTAC secretary, will be the timekeeper this evening. 2 seats on the Board of Education will be on the ballot this year. 2 5-year terms beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending on June 30th, 2030. The candidates with the highest and second highest votes will be elected to the 2 5-year terms. Brooke will now go over the format for tonight.
Thank you, Leah. Here's the format that we will follow this evening. The candidates were given the format in advance. Each candidate is allotted 2 minutes for opening statements, 2 minutes for each of the questions being asked, and 3 minutes for closing statements. There will be no additional time allotted for rebuttals. You may utilize your closing statement for additional comments/rebuttals. Opening statements will begin with the person drawn first. Question 1 will then go to the person drawn second, and so forth, rotating through all candidates. Please note, we are planning to have the forum recorded to be shared on any and all formats available to PTAs, including social media, and it is being streamed live tonight.
Thank you, Brooke. Mary will now give a statement about the duties of the elected school board members.
Good evening. Before we begin tonight's forum, it's important to understand what a school board does and doesn't do. School boards primarily set policies, approve budgets, and ensure our schools are meeting New York State expectations. They make decisions about district policies and school funding, but they do not set education mandates or control day-to-day school operations. Their role is bound to the limits of state and federal laws. Please keep these responsibilities in mind during tonight's discussion.
Thank you, Mary. Jana will now present our candidates.
This year's candidates listed in alphabetical order are Miriam Dasim, Ilana Jacob, Jessica Klein, Rosa Rivera McCutcheon, and Keith Singletary.
Thank you, Jana. Without further ado, we will begin with opening statements. Ms. Rivera McCutcheon, you drew first, so you will begin. Each candidate gets 2 minutes. So you're going to hold it down.
Thank you so much to the PTAC for organizing this forum. As I've informed the executive committee, I may need to leave early to rejoin my daughter's senior day with her lacrosse team, which is why I'm wearing a t-shirt today. So I'm Dr. Rosa Rivera McCutcheon, and I'm a mom and a lifelong educator, and I'm proud to be the only candidate who is endorsed by FUSE, which represents pedagogic staff and school-related professionals. I've also been endorsed by the Hispanic Democrats of Westchester. So there's a false narrative that's being spread about me on social media and beyond, and I want to be very clear. I believe that all kids, whether they are students with special needs, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, Israeli, Palestinian, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or any kids of any faith, Black, Latinx, English language learners, any kids, all kids deserve to be safe and included. I believe that care and safety are necessary conditions that have to be met if we want children to thrive. School boards and district leaders have a responsibility to ensure that our schools are free from all forms of bigotry and hate. My record of advocacy in the school district, in the broader New Rochelle community, and in my professional work demonstrates that I live these values on a daily basis. And those who have engaged with me, even when we disagree on hard issues, know that I enter into those conversations with an open mind and with integrity. We have to commit to partner with our communities to ensure that all of our students are engaged, that our histories, plural, are valued and not erased, and we have to turn harmful incidents into powerfully transformative opportunities to teach. My vision for the district is that all kids reach their full potential and beyond, and I'm ready to fight for all of our kids. If anyone who wants to hear more about my views that you have concern with, I want to encourage you to speak with me directly. Please do not rely on associations and conjecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dasim?
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good. Good evening, Miriam Dasim. I am a proud product of the New Rochelle School District. I want to thank the PTA Council, of which I am the PTAC, the Lincoln Attendance Zone PTAC rep. So these are my buddies. For having this forum for us to get to know each other and get to hear the platforms a little bit better. I have been involved in all sorts of organizations. I am a longtime member of different educational organizations. We make sure that kids access all education that we have offered in New Rochelle so that they are successful. I am, my background professionally is, we cannot see, I'm sorry. My background professionally is engineering. I have 25 plus years experience. I am I became an engineer because I'm a logical, practical, critical thinker, have always process-oriented, problem solver, and have always focused on education, and that's really my passion. That's why I'm here. That's how I got here. And again, this is one of my main platforms, is to ensure that all children graduate successfully with a strong foundation that allows them to successfully transition into adulthood. My buddies, tonight is Friday night. It's my birthday. I have to drive 6 hours to Buffalo. My son is graduating. He's a chemical engineer. Yay. So these are my buddies. Thank you.
Ms. Jacob.
Happy birthday. Good evening, New Rochelle. Thank you to PTAC for hosting this important forum. I'm Ilana Jacob. It's easy to dismiss Facebook as a few voices, but I also think it's a microcosm of many of our text message and living room conversations. I was disheartened to see the negative tone of discourse on Facebook this week. Please know, I am the only person who speaks on behalf of my own views, and I'm here tonight to let voters know what qualifications I carry if I were elected to the board. We're all here because we believe we have something to contribute, and we are all volunteering our time. I've had many conversations with teachers, administrators, parents, and residents visiting schools over New Rochelle over the course of these past few weeks. It has been eye-opening and educational. It's given me the opportunity to think about myself. And I understand a fair question is, what have I done for the community? Who am I? How can I, a fairly new resident with young kids in elementary school at Davis, who has not experienced the middle school or high school, possibly represent this entire community? But I want you to know that my leadership may be less apparent in the broader community, but I can rise to the occasion. On a professional level, I'm an attorney with over 12 years of experience, currently serving as in-house counsel at a Fortune 100 financial services company. I'm accustomed to navigating complex regulated systems, analyzing detailed data, negotiating contracts, hiring and managing teams, and building consensus amongst diverse stakeholders. Many people are rightfully angry and worried. The direction of the federal government policies and uncertainty of funding here doesn't alleviate our concerns. But I think we are a unique community and that we can coalesce around agreed ideas. There are 3 common ideas that we share: academic excellence, helping every child reach their personal potential, and supporting our teachers and staff in doing so by giving them the tools and funding those tools as an investment. Transparency and responsibility, by continuing with the transparency that we saw our superintendent bring to bear this year, and focusing on where we are going to go in a fiscally responsible manner. And finally, community input, understanding why people are leaving our district and where we need to make investments to recapture them. Thank you. Sorry
Thank
for going.
you. Mr. Singletary?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Singletary, and I first want to say thank you, PTAC, for having this event. I want to explain why I am well-equipped to add value to our Board of Education. I've lived in New Rochelle for 12 years, and I fell in love with this town for its culture, and its diversity. It's evident every time I look in the crowd and I see people at these events. It's evident when I go to, walk the streets, and it's evident mostly when I am in the schools and see the students. But the deciding factor why I moved to New Rochelle was the public school system. I interviewed the principals at Webster, Ward, and Davis, as well as at other 4 Westchester towns. But the decision to settle at New Rochelle with my wife and 2 daughters was really due to the quality of the teachers, the administration, and as well as the commitment to diversity within our school district. I'm running because I desire to better our district. There is, it's evident that I have experiences that will add value to the district. Over the last 8 years, I've participated in the board meetings. I've been asked to be involved in the superintendent interview process. I've worked on the interviewing for our principal. I've been at meetings, I've been visible, and I've seen many of you in those meetings. Now, I'm here to take my professional experience as a certified public accountant, as a person who's worked at a large financial institution where I manage risk, to basically help our district in a way of managing its own risk, building efficiencies and controls, and most of all, reviewing financial analysis. I'm known as a fixer. I listen, I build consensus, and I know how to execute at a high level. That's just really my job from 9 to 5. But if elected, I'll be more than just an accountant. I will be the person who will be your ears to make sure this district gets back on track. I understand budgeting, I understand how to set strategic goals.
I'm sorry.
And I understand how to support our goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And finally, Ms. Klein.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. And I just want to shout out to my kids watching on the live stream down in Florida that I'm in your high school auditorium. 25 years ago, I stepped into my first Westchester classroom. Since then, I've taught hundreds of students. I've watched them grow, struggle, and triumph, and I've seen education change lives. I'm Jessica Klein. I'm not a politician. I'm a teacher who believes in the power of education because I've witnessed it firsthand every single day. When my husband Joel and I chose New Rochelle as our home in 2002, we were drawn to this community's rich diversity. As we raised our family here, I've experienced our schools both as an educator and as a parent of a child with learning differences. The reality facing our district is challenging: a $20 million deficit, persistent achievement gaps, students still recovering from pandemic disruptions. Our Black students are 3.8 times more likely to face disciplinary action than our white students, and only 37% of our Hispanic Latino students read proficiently on grade 8 level. My Harvard research on achievement gaps has taught me that solutions do exist, but they require expertise and courage to implement. I'm running because our board needs someone who understands education from the inside out, someone who has lived the daily reality of teaching in today's complex educational landscape. If elected, I'll bring the classroom perspective to every decision, analyze data without forgetting the human stories behind the numbers, and I will always put our students first because ultimately that's what matters most. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll continue with the question segment of the evening. Ms. Dasim, you drew second, so we will have you begin the question segment first. Okay. Ms. Dasim, what specific interest or issue motivates you to serve on the Board of Education, and why is now the moment you've chosen to run? What about this particular time moves you to get involved?
As I mentioned in my opening statement, education is my passion. Because of education, as an immigrant child, this is something that was always stressed to me and was something that helped me to get where I am today. I've always been involved. I'm not involved just today. Been involved since I was a kid. Again, have always advocated for friends and family. I was always the most fluent in my family. So it isn't that. The particular issues, as I said, I'm always involved. So I always feel that the people are the most powerful seat in the House. And that's where I stand from, to mobilize and advocate. But I am tired. I'm tired of watching decisions being made without the proper data presented to us. And it's funny because it happens in a way that folks think that they're getting the information, but in fact are not. And the reason we know that is because look at the crisis that we're in now, and this is not the only crisis. As you know, we've had umpteen number of superintendents over the years. That's all as a result of piss poor decisions. So I am looking to help from the inside, from this seat. I know a lot of folks are very excited that I would get on because they know that I will represent their voice. I am going to make sure that we all receive the information in a way that we can make intelligent decisions. Not these decisions that leave us in a $20 million deficit, cutting teachers first, 3.95% tax hike. We can do better than this. There's no reason for us to be here. Thank you.
Ms. Jacob.
So I think a specific, can you hear me?
Bring it a little closer. Yeah.
Thank you. A specific issue, or maybe I'll start with why in the moment of time, because I think that sequentially tells it well. As a parent, becoming more tuned in to what's happening with my children's education as we continue on in elementary school and foresee the future, this is obviously a concerning time to have just recently set roots in the community. So I've been following closely, and I do feel that listening and ingesting all of the ideas that I've been receiving from teachers, principals, in the community, there are so
Push the button.
Oh,
Yeah.
there are so many ideas. And I think I can be someone who brings consensus on them. In terms of a specific issue, I think we use the term academic excellence very loosely, but as I've been having these conversations, what that means to me more now is ensuring we're helping kids at all levels. And I think that's an area where I hear feedback at all different levels. We need more IEP support and ICT classroom support. We need to give teachers in certain schools more support to help the children who carry more burdens with them on a day-to-day basis. We need to also help the kids who need to be more challenged in the classroom because that's part of the retention and building the reputation of this district. So I'm really interested in figuring out how we can do that and supporting our staff in doing so. And I recognize the budget conundrum creates a catch-22, but I think as a community we'll get stronger and we can build towards it.
Thank you. Mr. Singletary.
Thank you for the question. Our public school system is under attack. It's attacked at the federal level, and it's also attacked at the local level. We look at Congress right now. They recently came out with the preliminary budget. The initial estimates is that they're going to cut public school funding by $8.5 billion. If you look at a local level in New Rochelle, we have our proposed budget, which initially had over a $30 million deficit. That's my why. Our public school system is under attack. It's specifically in our hometown of New Rochelle. Now, I'm the type of person who wants to basically utilize my skills to address that. When I look at members of the current Board of Education, I ask, can a person like myself add value? And the answer is yes. The reason being is I'm a risk manager. I know how to look at trends. I know how to anticipate areas where we need to put more resources to navigate to make sure we attain our strategic goals. In addition to that, I've been here in New Rochelle in the school district. I'm talking about more than just going to Board of Ed meetings. I'm talking about currently I am the educational liaison for an after-school program where I know the boys that are within our high school. I started this program with boys at Isaac E. Young Middle School as well as Albert Leonard Middle School. As people say, my boots have been on the ground. With that said, we have to understand that this issue is something that's not going to be quickly fixed. I'm happy for the 5-year term because you need someone that could think strategically and work with the superintendent to come out with a plan that also comes up with new ideas that can relate to increasing our revenues, as well as being strategic on how we manage our fixed costs. If given the opportunity, I'll use my skill set to basically aid our school district to get out of this financial crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
I love this question, and I've answered it a lot in the last few weeks. I'm going to start with the why now. Why now is because it's the right time for me. My children are out of high school. One just graduated college this past weekend. Another one went into trade school. And because of New Rochelle, they are where they are today, and I'm incredibly proud of them. So it's the right time for me. About 4 years ago, in the height of COVID, when it was really tough here in the district, especially here at the high school, my daughter struggled tremendously. And because of New Rochelle, I am here tonight, and she is doing okay. They reached out to us and gave us help that was, as a parent, every child should get this help. I wish you don't need this help. You should get what I got from this school. And I am here. I opened that email in January and was really, I was stunned, like, what's going on? Oh my gosh. And when they helped me when I needed help, and I want to be here for them. I am an educator, I am a teacher, I am a community builder. I will do what it takes to help this city, this district, get through this crisis, because I know what it's like to have been there. Thank you.
Great. And finally, Dr.
Can you just repeat the question? I just want to make sure I get all parts of it.
No problem. Okay. What specific interest or issue motivates you to serve on the Board of Education, and why is now the moment you've chosen to run? What about this particular time moves you to get involved?
Okay, thank you. So there are a number of incredible changes that are happening that some of my colleagues here have mentioned. One is obviously the financial challenges. The other is the attack on public schools. So I'm going to focus on talking about some of the changes that are happening at the state level with the portrait of the graduate. As many people know, but too many people don't know, New York State has changed the graduation requirements. And the Regents exams, which many of us who attended schools in New York State can attest to, have been a staple in New York State since the early 1900s. And so there's an opportunity to really transform the way we do schools. That, coupled with the attack on public education, is really my why. So if we think about what we need to do to transform our schools, to ensure that all of our students are well served, that they have the opportunity not just to survive, but that they have the opportunity to thrive, right? To Jessica's point, right? We want our kids to be successful and to be excellent. The portrait of the graduate is not just a high school document. It really sets out a path forward for us to think about from kindergarten, from early childhood, to ensure that our students very early on are prepared to be successful in a variety of ways. But what's important for us to understand as a school district is that if we don't plan appropriately for that, the Regents exams will be the defaults for us, as opposed to the incredible amount of ways that students can demonstrate their competency across multiple areas. But if we don't invest the time and energy to think about those things and to plan for them and to build the capacity of educators, we will be failing our students. That's my why.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Okay, so we will be starting with Ms. Jacob for question 2. And it's a multiple-part question. What is the one thing the New Rochelle Board of Education has done well that you would like to see continue? And what is one area you believe needs improvement? If elected, what specific changes would you advocate for? And how would you approach differ from that of the current board?
Can I ask for clarification? Is the third part of that question changes on the board or changes in general?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is the third part of that question about changes on the board or changes in general?
How would your approach differ from the current board?
Right, thank you. So I think something that we've seen that might be considered both a positive and a negative is communication and transparency. I think over the last few years, we've seen a lot of change and lack of that transparency and communication. And going back to last year, when information came out about a potential change in bus times, I think the community was not then well informed and educated about why we needed to make those changes and what was going to happen. That like in the coming year, we were gonna kind of be in dire straits financially. I think this year, the superintendent has been excellent. So going to the positive, I think this year the superintendent has been excellent around his communication and opening forums up to the community to ask and answer those questions. I know there will always be people who still think there is not enough information and communication and we can always do better, but I saw a big difference between how the bus issue was handled last year and going into this year. So I'd like to see that trajectory continue, and I also would like to see us continue to support the superintendent. We've had a lot of change in this community, and you cannot thrive as an educational system when you've had 7 leaders over 8 years. That means bosses are constantly changing, expectations are constantly changing, and you can't support your superintendent in making investments. So I think the biggest thing we would need to continue to do is support the superintendent on his vision going forward. In terms of making improvements, I think one little tweak would just be to engage the community more in board meetings. It's a hard balance. We want to showcase our schools and our principals and everything our students are doing, but they do go late into the night. With working parents, different schedules, we have athletics for our children. I think we could just revisit how board meetings are held to create more community conversation and engagement.
Thank you. Mr. Singletary?
Since I moved to New Rochelle in 2016, almost every year there's been like a season of chaos. With that being said, I would say the current board has done a good job where they finally have staff in place that really care for New Rochelle. Now, this season of chaos for Superintendent Reynolds did begin in January when we started this budgeting process. But I have to tell you, there's been a lack of instability for a number of years within the Board of Education due to the turnover of superintendents, as well as I'm going to just move on. Relating to how improvements. They've said this in many board meetings relating to their roadmap. The strategic roadmap was something that was unfortunately not focused on during the COVID years. And by doing so, it's quite evident when you look at some of the statistics that over the last 10 years, we've lost over 1,000 students. But if you looked at, we've had a net hiring over 400 individuals, you have to question the efficiency within their hires. What would I do different? I see that there's a lack of trust within our board. One way in which we can improve upon that is building, having clear, transparent communication. I am known as a person that knows how to build consensus. I know how to listen to individuals. I know how to create goals that are strategic and keep people accountable to obtain those goals, but also provide that support. All of this is important to me because one of the most important things within the strategic roadmap is having a quality education to all. So I would work on building consensus and transparency and, well, being transparent and clear in communication. Thank you.
Mrs. Klein?
I think something the Board of Ed has done well, I'm going to start there, is this year I feel like there's a little more transparency, which is an improvement over what I've seen in the past. I met with people this week at the train station, in restaurants, and talking, and I kept hearing over and over again the feel from residents of the lack of interest, that there are events that board members don't go to. One of the things that I love, that I am really good at, is walking around, talking to people, engaging people, and celebrating what's going on. So what I think is so important is to have that level of, the board members out among the district coming to these events. I think what they've also done well, there's been a lot of instability. We all acknowledge that. I know that our current superintendent has just signed on for an extension. That will help us tremendously. It's going to get us through with his guidance. So I support him. I support what the board is doing with him. And, that's really how I feel. That's it.
Dr. McCutcheon?
So something that has been increasingly, I'm going to focus on, there are lots of things that we do well in this district. I just want to say that, and that the board does well. And there are, of course, opportunities for improvement. And I'm going to focus on science research because it's something that is lauded across various parts of our district. So the science research program is a really rigorous program, and one of the things that the district has done well and that the Board of Education has done well is to prioritize that program and similar programs around ensuring that we have academic excellence. What is a challenge and what needs to improve is ensuring that there is access and opportunity for all of our students to succeed and to attain a spot and to be successful in science, in programs like science research, right, in those accelerated programs. And so one of the things that needs to happen is we need to make sure that we're doing, on an ongoing basis, that we're doing an analysis of who's having access to that. The reason this is important is if we look at what's happening in our schools and where we are losing enrollment, is very often after elementary school and sometimes after the middle school, Parents are pulling their kids out of the public school system because they're concerned that their kids are not going to get the opportunity to have the individualized instruction, the rigorous instruction, the attention. And so if we can make sure that we are focusing on that, that will improve our enrollment, our dollars, et cetera. In terms of the Board of Education, again, I think part of what has been a challenge is the instability. But it's the responsibility of the Board of Education to provide oversight and to ensure that our dollars are aligning with our values. And those values are about ensuring that there is academic excellence for all students.
Ms. Tassim?
So do you mind just topping off,
Sure.
since I heard a lot of things?
Okay.
Yeah.
What is one thing the New Rochelle Board of Education has done well that you would like to see continue? And what is one area you believe needs improvement? If elected, what specific changes would you advocate for, and how would your approach differ from that of the current board?
I think I got it. I think the New Rochelle School District, the one thing we do well in spite of ourselves is that we always provide, as Board of Ed member Valerie Williams likes to say, world-class education. We do it well. We have programs and we offer an education that's second to none, better than a lot of parochial schools and a lot of private schools. We manage to always still do that. I'm very proud of that and want that to continue. And I also think that we attract a lot of wonderful people to the board. Everybody's well-meaning, well-qualified, as you could see here. I know these, Rosa and Keith, already we've worked on several organizations. These two new ladies I've just met, but they're wonderful people too. So that I want to see us continue. What I'd like to see us change is the information, the information that we get and how disseminated. Unfortunately, there's a lot of, I think it's presented, I think it's a lot of rhetoric, and it makes you feel like there's transparency, but it's not. Just about I attended every budget meeting, and what I heard say is, why do we have to take these courses? Why do we have to lay off teachers? Why do we have to stagger buses? You didn't show us the data that tells us that, and we're still asking for that. So parents, since last year we talked about bus transportation changing. Many of the parents haven't even, how can you do this? What will you need in order for us to successfully implement this? So transparency is not really there. We're not getting the information. So the main thing that I'd like to change, of course, all kids getting educational access. And secondly, the information that we're getting, you're going to hear from me. You're going to hear me ask the questions that needs to be asked so that we're clear and we're making informed
Thank you, Ms.
decisions.
Tassim.
Thank
Your time
you.
is up. So for our next question, Mr. Singletary will start it. Do you believe the school district is effectively ensuring equity across all schools in terms of resources, opportunities, and support? Where do you see strengths, and where do you believe improvements are needed to make the system more equitable for all students, regardless of school or neighborhood?
New Rochelle has 10 schools, from the high school, the 2 middle schools, to the 7 elementary schools. And each of them have their own specific jewel. You know, we always talk about like some of the jewels within the high school, such as the advanced placement courses, where New Rochelle offers more courses than any other school in Westchester. But we also have attributes relating to, debate, dual enrollment, our performing in visual arts education, robotics, science research. There are a lot of skills, there are a lot of benefits within the school, as well as the BOCES program that provides students the opportunity to advance themselves within trades. When you look at our middle schools, the biggest thing I've seen by talking to both principals is their true love for the students. That is something that's actually perpetuated within all the schools that I've had the opportunity to talk to. When I speak to the principals, they understand that they have certain issues they want to address, whether or not it's safety, whether or not it's providing equitable education, and they understand by doing that they have to roll their sleeves up and work with their teachers so that they can be effective in achieving that goal. And regarding to things that they can improve at, within the high school, recently there was a decision to eliminate advanced pathways by getting rid of honors courses within algebra, geometry, science research, and others. That is going to disproportionately impact, areas within our community that are predominantly Black as well as our Latin students. I think one thing that we need to understand that if we look at the representation of our school district, we have to make sure that there's equitable access, that there's fair opportunity for all students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
So I've been meeting with some principals and was asking them just these questions. And some of their answers were inspiring, they were wonderful, and they were also concerning. Again, a gamut of emotions. When I was speaking to the principal at Davis, we were talking about some of the after-school offerings and programs that they have, that they're offering to all their students. And one of the concerns, especially given the change in the transportation for next year, one of the things they're looking at is when children stay for after school so we can have these programs, they're arranging, multiple people are calling and arranging carpools and trying to get everybody a ride home because not everybody has it. Somewhere along the way, this needs to be addressed so that it's fair and equal so all children can attend these programs and get home easily. In our high school, we are we have the largest offering of AP courses, and it's fantastic. I want to make sure that all children are able to take the courses. Is there a barrier to entry? Is there a financial hardship in applying for these courses? No child in New Rochelle should lack for any resource that any other child should get. So that's one of the things I really intend on looking at. I think we have wonderful intentions, talking with these school leaders, hearing about the Halloween costume drives, the clothing drives, anything to make the children feel like they belong and welcome. And I think we have more work to do.
Thank you. Dr. Rivera-McCutcheon?
So if you talk to any parents on the south end of New Rochelle and educators that are working in those schools, they would say resoundingly, no. If you talk to parents and educators at Huguenot Academy, which is often forgotten, they would resoundingly say no. Equity is not the same. It is about giving resources that are needed to ensure that various schools and people, the students, get what they need. So student A may not need the same thing as student B. Equity is about providing each of those students what they need. So let's look at, for instance, Huguenot Academy. If you're a student that wants to participate in any of the PAVE programs, you are at Huguenot Academy, you cannot participate in PAVE. Very often, those students at Huguenot Academy cannot engage in advanced classes, in AP classes, because they don't have those resources there. And then let's talk about access to the advanced pathways in the high school. If we don't have equity in our schools, right? So let's look at who's in those classes. Let's understand what is the pathway that kids started on from kindergarten to get into the AP classes, from kindergarten to get into the honors classes. If we look at those data, we may see some troubling trends, which is to say that certain kids from certain schools and certain communities are not represented. My point is not to say that we need to take the resources away from other communities. What we need to do is figure out how to ensure that we are providing the best opportunity for excellence, for rigor, for advancement to all of our students. That is what equity is. And we need to make sure that we're doing the analysis to better understand where the problems are and address them.
Thank you. Mr. Seam?
No, it's not equitable. I lived it. I graduated from here, did well. My son is doing well. My nephew's doing well. So, and there's lots of other individuals that I know that graduate. We have graduates that go to the best schools in the nation, right? We know that. We list them every year. But we also have kids, for some reason, and graduate to the corner of Lincoln Avenue. That's unacceptable, especially when you have a school system that is so rich in resources and programs. We can't allow that to happen, and it's been happening for generations. So when we talk about equity, it is talked about, but it is by design that it's not equitable. It isn't an accident. And we've got to speak to it. We've got to go after it. One of the things that I've talked about is the clear demarcation is in the 8th grade. If all of our kids take algebra and living environment, you have now put them in a track that they can access AP classes, they can access all the advanced classes. When that child gets it in the 9th grade, it's a totally different path. And that's what it is now, because all kids are required to take Regents. Back when I was in school, you could graduate with a comprehensive degree. And Dr. Adelaide Sanford worked hard to make sure that all kids took Regents, and I don't want to see that being taken away. The point here is that we can do this. We know what it takes. We already have successful graduates, so it's not something from the outside. We just have to make sure we apply it to all of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jacob?
So I think there's a difference between financial equity and then equity of what's really needed in each individual school. So I'm sure, and I don't know the answer to this, I'm sure if we looked at the funding per child in this district, it's equitable. But that doesn't mean we are giving each child what they need to thrive and reach their full potential. I'm basing this not being on an expert in education, but having spoken to parents, getting anecdotal stories, and speaking to various school leaders. And I say this also, that our teachers are fantastic educators, but if they are not given the resources, the extra hands in the classroom to succeed in educating 25 kids in a classroom, we can't from the ground up get our kids ready for high school, and that's when we have problems in the high school, when we all coalesce in that environment and we continue the narrative of North versus South and pointing fingers. I think we have to fix it from the beginning. I would love to see more investment in pre-K education, in additional hands and bodies and faces in the classroom for our elementary school students. I would love to get, I have concerns, of course, about the number of student-facing staff that are being cut with this budget, and I have concerns if the budget doesn't pass about how far that could go. Because even if you have the teacher, you need those additional aides and those extra hands in the classroom to help our elementary age students so they reach reading proficiency by 3rd grade. When we let it go beyond that, we are just perpetuating those inequities that we speak about. That's just one example, but I think there's so many things we could speak about. I also want to just mention one thing I've been doing a lot more reading about, and I don't have personal experience, but BOCES programming, and bringing that back more in a homegrown way to the high school, so that we don't have to first spend so much money sending our kids out of the district, but that we can incrementally rebuild and reintegrate our students into the district so our students can learn from both ends. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Klein. In light of the current fiscal challenges, both nationally and here in New Rochelle, many in our community are concerned about the ongoing cycle of tax increases. It has been said that we need stronger oversight when approving school budgets to ensure accountability as we maintain alignment with New York State education standards. As a board member, how would you work to balance fiscal responsibility with educational quality, and what steps would you take to help break this seemingly unending cycle?
Yeah, it's a lot. um, I think what needs to be done is, you know, I went to work. We got the email, read through what they said, you know, we're cutting X number of people, making all these changes. And I went to a meeting and brought home that giant budget proposal thing that's still sitting in my living room. And I went through it. I have many questions on some of the items in there. I am not an expert on many of the things that are in that budget. I am an expert of what goes on in a classroom. I think what we need to do is hear from the teachers, hear what's necessary, listen to the experts in curriculum and in pedagogy, and also bring in people with fiscal responsibility. You know, talk to our city council. Why is all this money not coming in from the development downtown? I've lived here 23 years almost, and I have yet to see the influx. And the residents, the homeowners, we are bearing the brunt of these increases, and I'm not seeing it come about from any other way. So we need to bring in more revenue, and that needs to be explored. I think this is a community problem, and it needs to be addressed as a community. We need to engage the residents. We need to have their input and have them engaged in some of the decision-making, as well as the superintendent and the city council. Thank you.
Dr. Rivera-McCutcheon,
Can
your
you
turn.
repeat the question, please?
Sure, of course I can. So I won't go into all the beginning part, but as a board member, how would you work to balance fiscal responsibility with educational quality? And what steps would you take to help break this seemingly unending cycle of tax increases?
Okay, thank you. So something that I said earlier was to think about how do we ensure that the dollars that we are getting into our district and the money that we're spending, be it tax, the state funding, et cetera, that we're budgeting in alignment with our values. And so if our values are to ensure that every child in New Rochelle gets an excellent education, that this is the destination for anybody who is looking to move into our neighborhood, they say, we want to move to New Rochelle because we know our kids are going to get a stellar education from kindergarten or pre-K all the way up through 12th grade. If that is what our vision is, and that is what my vision is, then we need to make sure that the way that we're spending our dollars is actually in alignment with that. So that means that we have to evaluate, particularly at the district level, where our dollars are being spent at the central office, how those dollars are being spent, and how do we ensure that we maximize the expertise of the educators that are in our schools? How do we ensure that the leaders in our schools are adequately prepared to support the instruction in the schools, right? Curriculum is one thing, but we need to make sure that our leaders are effectively evaluating instruction, not for the sake of harm, right? Not for the sake of gotcha, but for the sake of what does this teacher need and how do I provide the support to ensure that they can improve? Because ultimately, our students need to improve. So in terms of steps, it really is about assessing how is that money being spent and how do we ensure that we are lifting up and leveraging the expertise of the educators in the buildings, including the school leaders. That is something that I have experience doing.
Thank you. Ms. Tassim?
So this ongoing tax cycle of always raising it is, to me, unacceptable. And if you listen to the business managers, they talk about if you don't increase the tax hike by at least the cap, which is roughly about 2%, we'll talk about that, whatever the tax levy might be, you're leaving money on the table. That's unacceptable. We've got to figure out a way to educate our kids to conduct business without having to increase taxes every year. So that's something that we need to push back and advocate for. That's one. If we're not fiscally responsible, we're not going to educate our kids well. We've been wasting money for a long time, and we have got to figure out how to rein this in. So with me, I think we need to look at things like cost-benefit analysis. Since we say transportation is an issue, what is the cost-benefit analysis of us having our own buses? We've been asking for it. Give it to us. Don't just tell us, oh, it's going to be too expensive. Oh, all buses, we're required to buy all electrical buses, and that we won't be able to afford that. That's not going to cut it. The fact that you're telling us now that we need to stagger our times and not explain exactly how are we going to save that money? Like, what does it cost for us to bus the kids now? Where are we spending the bulk of the money? Do the kids use the bus? I went out and I started, because they wouldn't answer, I started asking bus drivers, hey, how many kids can you carry? One of them told me 9. And I said, but how many can the bus take? 16. Why? Why do we have it like that? And there's a list of others. So that's one. PAVE. We talk about PAVE being open to everybody. We don't have PAVE. We allow kids into dance, but art is the covenant one. Why can't all the kids go into art? We don't have enough teachers. What did we do? We hired a social and emotional learning when we could have hired another art teacher, which could provide social and emotional learning to everyone. We hired a social and emotional learning director that we paid for 3 years and shouldn't have hired them because it was with temporary funding, and now we have to let them go. That is such a waste of money.
Time. I'm sorry,
Thank you.
Ms. Dean. Thank you. And Ms. Jacob.
Sure. So I think just to open and not to paint a dire picture, but this is a very tough reality that we as a district will continue to face, but also many districts in New York are facing. So part of that is making tough decisions in the coming years to come out stronger. And I think for many of us as parents in this district, that doesn't really feel right. We're all taxpayers and we're going to get the short end of the stick. But there's hope to the story, but I do think it's the story that we need to understand because we can't fix everything. We can't fix enrollment decline unless we come up with a better plan to market our district. But in the present state, we have what we have. And so you asked about some solutions, how I'd get in there and try to manage with fiscal responsibility. I think one thing is I'd love to get a better understanding of what our current auditing practices are and really require the board to understand on a line-by-line basis with a more granular view. If you spent $1 million last week, how was it used? Let's start to question and evaluate, not to get anyone in trouble, but to find the savings, to be really tactical and practical. The second thing is I mentioned the enrollment decline, and it is an unfortunate reality, and we have not seen the fruition coming from the buildings downtown. Maybe we will, but we might get hit more with numbers rejiggering on that front. So we need to get ahead of that. And I think we really do need to come up with a master marketing plan for our schools. We all know what's in the schools, but I think as new people coming to town, it's hard to navigate where to go, and you go whatever realtor or Facebook group told you to go visit. You visit that elementary school. Or you hear people say, oh, you can go to elementary, but maybe you won't stay for the high school. Oh, did you hear about that safety thing? Well, these are not the right messages. We have good messages, and let's also create good messages by fixing the things from ground up that I think we've been answering some of these other questions. Finally, I really want to learn more and have the district invest in partnerships and grants. There's a lot of money out there in the world. Let's figure out how we can get it to invest in our students if we don't have it in the district.
Thank you. Mr. Singletary?
Relating to fiscal responsibility, the way I'll address this is rolling my sleeves up, getting dirty. What do I mean by that? We have a history of board documents. Within those board documents, it's going to outline the decisions that really got us here. This financial situation just didn't happen overnight. It took years of ill decisions that led us here. So first thing we need to understand is, like, how did we get here specifically? Was there independence within the decisions relating to how dollars were spent? Was there a clear analysis by looking at the market related to the compensation that was provided to individuals? Did we consider providing different term limits well, we understand that. Did we provide term limits relating to opportunities of hires when we knew that we only had short-term funding? So we really need to understand the why, and then it's like, what are we going to do going forward? It's really looking at the revenue side and then the expenses. Right now, relating to our budget, 67% comes from taxes. Our neighbors are feeling the weight of this, and I feel as if it's time for us to look at other areas where we could basically lessen the load. Within the local aid, other than taxes, yes, we have the pilot tax deferment revenue stream that comes from the new development. Now, those pilots that were established originally that are in place can't be changed, but we could do something for the new buildings that are being built. It's going to take partnering with our city council to understanding exactly what we can do to these developers. New Rochelle is proven as a place people want to build, so if they're going to come here, they need to pay their fair share. In addition to that, we need to understand that this is a place that people such as charter schools are trying to attack. We need to provide a value proposition to our students, providing quality education to everyone, so we can stop the flight of people leaving our school district and basically increase the ratings so people value the school district as it was in the past and as it will be in the future. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and make sure that on a go-forward basis, we avoid this fiscal cliff in future years.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, we'll start with Dr. McCutcheon. What do you know about the special education department in New Rochelle? How would you support the students, families, and teachers in the special education community? And what steps would you take to help improve special education programs?
So I'll start by saying that I think early childhood educators and special educators are the jewels very often in education systems, because they have an understanding of how to differentiate, how to assess students, and how to make adjustments, and then also how to advocate for their students. So the special education department in New Rochelle, like many school systems, is under-resourced and underfunded. And very often parents feel challenged navigating the system. And so part of what we need to do is to ensure that we are looking at and providing the resources and leveraging the expertise of those educators to make adjustments and ensure that all students with special needs, with IEPs, with 504 plans, get the services they need. But I would also suggest that what we need to do is ensure that the special educators, that the school systems, that again, the instructional leadership is really leveraging the expertise of those people who are special educators to support those folks, those educators like myself, who did not have specialized training in special education, to learn how to also share the responsibility of educating students with special needs. Special educators cannot do that work alone. They need to work in partnership with general ed teachers. And so, again, I want to emphasize that we have the expertise and the excellence in our schools. We need to figure out how to leverage that. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at one of our now retired experts in special education and leveraging the training that she received, Ms. Otilia Tanner, leveraging the education that she received, the training she received, to train others and support all of our educators being adept at supporting students with special needs.
Miriam?
Special education, we hear it all the time. I know lots about special education, and I don't think I know as much as I'd like to know about special education. For one, I know that we're always saying that we need to hire more special educators. I don't understand how every year we're the only educators and the only room we have is to hire more special education teachers because we need to meet the requirements. Why is this such a deficit? Last year, I think we had 33 people retire, and the explanation that we got was we're not going to lose 33, we're going to hire 22 special educators, which means it's only going to be about 9. And the question was, wait a minute, we're losing 33. Explain which 33 have we lost. Were they all 33 special educators? No, we need to hire 22 because we need to make sure we meet the requirements. That's what I hear every year, and we can't seem to meet that. So we need to figure that out. I also have a love-hate relationship with special education because from the Black community in particular, our kids are always put in special education, being labeled that they need special education, when in fact, lots of times it's a matter of maybe some behavioral issues and just learning how to properly educate that child. So we need to understand that, because what that means is we have funneled a bunch of kids in special education that probably shouldn't be in special education. You cannot have a household where everyone in the house, all the kids in the house, have an IEP and are in special education. Something doesn't sound right. We need to fix that. We need to be clear about that. And I, too, would definitely lean on Ms. Ottilia Tanner that we unfortunately just lost out of this
That's time.
cut. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs?
Can
Jacob,
you
sorry.
repeat the question? It's okay, very common. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. What do you know about the special education department in New Rochelle? How would you support the students, families, and teachers in the special education community? And what steps would you take to help improve special education programs?
We have very many three-part questions, so thank you for the patience in repeating them. I don't have broad experience personally with the special education department in New Rochelle, but I've been learning and listening as I have been on this journey. And I also have friends who have a lot of experience, so just as a parent and friend to other people in this district, I have learned. Also, my sister-in-law is going for a special education degree and currently works in the city doing her teacher training, so I also hear from her. So I would say it's anecdotal. Maybe we'll hire her one day here. No, it's anecdotal information, and the common theme is it's hard to navigate even when you have the resources to navigate it, even when you can pay for a very fancy lawyer to do what you need to do, or figure out how to advocate to the principal for what you need, or make sure that your child who is in a 12-1-1 still got invited to the class trip with their appropriate grade. These are really complicated things that I've heard directly from parents. And it's hard to hear and not have an answer to. I think I have heard Dr. Reynolds speak a lot about his vision for special education, and I would support him in that vision. I know he has a goal to build it up, and I would want to dig in and learn more and support in any way we could. And one thing, I don't know if this is possible, but when we think about the longevity and just the crisis we have, I think, as a country in getting special education teachers, we need to be competitive in our offerings to teachers to hire them. And we should be a hub for training special ed teachers. We should have a vision of what we want to be for 10 years and make teachers want to come here and learn with us and train with us. And that would fill so many gaps so that we can give the kids what they need in the district so that we do not always have to send kids out of the district. It's not never, but not always.
Thank you. Mr. Singletary?
It's interesting, over, I'll say the past 48 hours, I spoke to about 5 parents who had children with special needs. One thing we have to understand that the city of New Rochelle is obligated to provide what is needed to our children, even all children, particularly those with special needs. It's actually one of the attributes which I know certain parents identify and come to New Rochelle because of all the resources that we have relating to special ed. One thing that we have to understand is that it's been neglected. There's been decisions that have been tactical. When I say that, something like Huguenot Academy only has a contract that's due to expire within 2026. The question is, what are we going to do after that? If on the board, I will work to come up with a strategy, not only for Huguenot Academy, but also providing support for our aides as well as our teachers so they could feel supported. Just today, a parent was saying that his teacher doesn't feel appreciated in special ed. The teacher of his child probably needs some bias training because he feels his kid is targeted. This is something that I've heard from various parents. So when I say quality education for all, it's really for all students, start from special needs to those who are accelerated classes and those in the middle. But we need to understand that for our special needs, we have to be strategic, and we don't need to just Band-Aid some of our decisions, but think from a long-term perspective how we can make New Rochelle continue to be known as a place that people want to come to, because if they have kids with special needs, they'll be taken care of.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
I have a lot of experience with the special ed department here in New Rochelle. And I will tell you again, they are my heroes. I want to go back to the beginning. As a teacher in a classroom, I have sat through more IEP meetings, more conversations with parents. It's very hard as a teacher to have a conversation with a parent that your student is struggling. As a parent, it is so difficult to hear from a teacher that their child is struggling and not meeting certain milestones or certain needs. It's a very frightening time for parents. One thing that must be done is parents need to feel that they are not being judged, that the schools, the district is here to help them and support them. Parents need a roadmap of what is the special ed process from the moment a child is referred all the way through to the end results, whether it's in pre-K, whether it's in kindergarten, or you don't get that IEP until 8th or 9th grade. Anytime a parent is going through that, they need assistance. They need someone to explain it to them multiple times. This is what's happening. This is what we're going to do. Coming out of the pandemic, we see so many more students who require special ed services. We are going to need more special ed teachers. We are going to need more targeted interventions across the district. I have had a wonderful experience. They partnered with us, and I hope that they partner with everybody else.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with Ms. Tassim. What are your top 3 education priorities you would aim to accomplish during your time in office, ideally? How do you plan to achieve them, and why do you believe these are the most important?
So one of them I already talked about, top 3 education priorities. One of them is, like I said, I think all of our kids should be prepared to take algebra and living environment in the 8th grade. That's definitely one. Regions. I love regions. I don't like standardized tests that much for all the reasons that we know of, but regions I felt was a really good measure of what you learned in class, as long as you practice the regions. And back when I went to school, come December, you went away for a Christmas break, you came back with that regions book to start practicing. We don't really do that anymore. We give them handouts, we tell them to go on the computer, and it's just lost. And that Barron's book really solidifies you learning what it is that you need, because the regions you does measure what you learned in class, but they tend to present it to you a little differently. They ask you questions reverse. You don't have to do a lot of calculations, but you have to be familiar with it. And we have lost our ways to the point that we're ready to say, oh, regions is like, it's too hard, we're testing and we don't want to do it, and we're going to eliminate regions. That is sad. Again, Adelaide Sanford worked hard, because what we were doing before is the kids would go to regions, academic, that means you were college bound, or they'd give you a comprehensive track and you weren't going to go to college. Not because you didn't choose to, and it's okay to do trade and all of that, but we're pushing kids there, especially Black kids. So that's something that's important. My third one, I forgot. But I would say definitely there's always time for us to make sure that we have the communication and the information that we need so parents know what it is that they have to make sure that their kids are taking. Like right now,
Thank you.
you should be
That's time.
talking to your counselors. Thank you.
Ms. Jacob?
I will preface that I don't know if every priority is a reality and how it fits, but I'm thinking vision and investment in our district. We did just speak about special ed, and I think that could be a priority, certainly, but I don't want to repeat what I've said, but I just want to acknowledge the hub that I spoke about building out. But my priority there first is earlier education, pre-K for all, being more built into our schools. Again, I don't know if we have the space for it. It might require rethinking how we use our space or finding other space, but 3 hours of UPK splitting up in one building is not enough for this district. The rest of it is being offered through private institutions, but we need to figure out how to do more. And I think that goes hand in hand with a lot of the priorities we've spoken about getting to our kids early and making sure they have the right skills. The other thing is conversations that I've been hearing around how we integrate our schools across the North and South and what each school is known for and how we draw people across the schools. This is a really hard topic to discuss, and I just think it deserves a revisit. Are there magnet programs that we could offer at Columbus or Jefferson that will draw people across the district? Can we make a different profile for our schools so we begin to think through those divides? And finally, I think our high school is fantastic. I know it was once a blue ribbon school. I think we have a lot of fantastic programming, and we need to figure out what is our focus, what makes us, again, that blue ribbon school. And that might mean we can't do everything, but let's hone in on whether it's PAVE, science programming, language arts, whatever it is, let's hone in on that and come up with our wish list, the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, so we can have fiscal responsibility while rebuilding our brand.
Thank you. Mr. Singletary?
Yes, and related to the priorities, it's really three. Quality education for all, providing support for parents, and two, coming up with a solution to the budget. Relating to the first one, I've consistently talked about having quality education for all because one issue that we have throughout all the regions within our town is that parents feel as if we do not really provide equitable and a fair process for people to have quality education. That's relating to how their students, how their child are able to get in certain programs such as Kaleidoscope, CELA, and when they advance to the high school, historically, honors courses and advanced placement courses. We have to understand that there needs to be controls in place that basically inform our administrators to make sure there is a fair and equitable process, that the communication is clear, so that you and our neighbors understand that their child has access, has a right to quality education. Relating to parents, being a parent to a senior, I understand, well, I've been taught, to best navigate your child, you really have to start with an elementary school. I'm not sure if it's really clear about the things that you can do to navigate your child through this whole, this process at New Rochelle. It's being an active parent. It's going to parent-teachers night. It's providing support to the principals when they ask. It's being involved in the PTA. It's utilizing SEPTA, understanding the value that SEPTA provides to our special needs, as well as just understanding the resources such as our public libraries. Relating to budget, that's pretty self-explanatory, but I talked about how I roll up my sleeves, but we have to look at certain data relating to the population shift that's happening within New Rochelle. That's going to impact our decisions. We have to make sure that we can fight this litigious environment that we're in. We need to come up with a solution for Huguenot Academy.
Thank
and one
you,
thing I
that's
have
time.
is just having ideas from our neighbors to come up with a solution on a budget.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
So my three priorities is to shrink the achievement gap, meeting students where they are, the truancy problem that we have now, and lastly, universal pre-K. Let me start with the achievement gap. We know that there's a gap with our learners here in New Rochelle. There are discrepancies. Students who live in poverty, Black and Hispanic students, have lower scores than our white students. This gap needs to be bridged. The best way to bridge this gap is early literacy, which sort of goes into my universal pre-K as the last one. We know that early literacy is going to set up our children for success down the road. There is a marker at the 3rd grade level for students, how they're going to perform later in life based on their 3rd grade achievement. The schools are employing the Orton-Gillingham literacy program, which is the most data-proven literacy program for our students. For the sake of time, I want to jump ahead to truancy. Children cannot learn or meet standards without coming to school. We need to find out, why are they not coming? Is it fear? Is it anxiety? As a parent of a child who struggled with this, I understand how hard it is. We want our children to go to school, and for many reasons they can't. We need to understand this problem and this cause. The last piece, universal pre-K, goes to early literacy. The sooner children are in school, the better educational outcome they will have. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McCutcheon?
Okay, so I'm going to run after this because I've got a kid who's already scored a couple of goals and I've missed most of the game. So first, supporting the adults who support our kids. That is fundamental. We need to make sure that we're focusing on instruction and supporting the adults. Most educators, teachers, professionals want to improve. They want to be better. They want to expand themselves professionally. Let's tap into that, make sure that we are providing them with the opportunities to advance their skill, and then build in their leadership capacity within the school buildings and within the district. We need to also make sure that we're providing them with the support, for instance, to ensure that when you are working with students with special needs, that you are truly including them in the instructional processes in schools, rather than excluding them. That requires training, that requires skill. We need to make sure that we invest in that. 2, we need to also make sure that we are focusing on equity, justice, safety, and inclusion. I started my talk today, or my comments today, focusing on that. I actually want to reinforce that. Students need to feel safe and feel included and feel as if they belong in order to be their best selves. And so a lot of people think that that's sort of fluff, but what I'm talking about and what I've written about and what I've researched about, since people want to talk about radical care, is that care is about more than hugs. That's my point. We need to make sure that we are excelling. We need to make sure that we are ensuring students are both advocated for, embraced, and using that relationship to leverage expertise. And finally, we need better communication with families. We talked about learning management systems during COVID. That disappeared. Google Classroom is not the way that parents need to know about how their kids are doing. We need to ensure that we are providing multiple pathways for families to be engaged. They can't always come to school. So we need to make sure that we are reaching out as a school system to ensure that they are true partners in this education endeavor. And my apologies for leaving early.
Thank you very much. Okay. Don't be sorry. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jacob. The next question. What do the terms inclusion, diversity, and equity mean to you? As a Board of Education member, how would you promote and ensure these values are upheld for all students?
I know that the terms diversity, equity, and inclusion are under attack right now, but I think they're really just core to values of who we are as people. And I think in our day-to-day as a community, we can be good at it and we can be not so good at it. And I think it's incumbent on both the community and the schools to aspire to those values. So I think as a community, we've talked a little bit about some of the divisions earlier this night and how to bring that together. And I think as a board member, it's going to different events, it's engaging in conversations, it's sharing back that information, but also as a parent in this community and a community member, it's the same thing. It's going beyond your usual community to extend that hand to another parent, to have a play date with your child, to do something out of your ordinary and norm. And if I've learned anything through conversations these last few weeks, that's some goal I will take with myself as I continue on in my journey as a parent in this community. Equity and inclusion is also about safety and inclusion in the schools. And I think that's a lot of topics to digest. But as a board member, we really need to support the superintendent and the schools in the right education for our teachers, the education for our students, the right programming that really builds up the whole child, and finally, addressing bad behavior and poor actions, sorry to use the word bad, but addressing poor or misguided actions appropriately so that a child learns for the next time. It's not a child is never born with ill will. These are things learned on the internet, in the community. Our children are exposed to so much. It's very hard to parent in this day and age, and I'm not even fully there yet with how young my kids are, but I see it beginning with computer access and YouTube and different things our children find. And we have to be really vigilant as parents, but vigilant
That's
in the
time.
schools.
Thank you. Mr. Singletary?
And regarding to the diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, DEI is something that's one of the core values within our school system. I think if you look at our town, there's so many various cultures that live within New Rochelle. New Rochelle is truly a microcosm of the United States. It's evident if you look at like the social and economic differences among our various communities. It's evident when you look at, you know, the places that many people are from, whether or not, you know, from a Latin culture or African American culture or within the European culture. All those types of differences is valued within New Rochelle. We represent values that in which we admire and appreciate our differences. And that's one of the reasons that myself and so many people I've talked to value the diversity within New Rochelle. From an inclusion, one thing that relates to is we have to fight the isms that's within our city. We need to make sure that all the isms that are prevalent within our society, our children can look at the board, look at the policies and procedures they put in place so that they feel protected, that they feel safe, and for that parents understand that there's policies in place that if there is an ism that their child is dealing with, the board is working to make sure we eliminate them or we just address them and we hear them. Relating to equity, we have to have a fair and equitable process for all students to have quality education. Access in a way in which people feel as if, by having clear communication, we need to make sure that people understand that they have access to all the attributes, all the special programs within New Rochelle. Diversity and equity inclusion is important to myself. I know it's important based upon the mission of New Rochelle, and it's something that I definitely will work to maintain as a priority and exemplified if given an opportunity on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
Would you mind just repeating the question?
Not at all. What do the terms inclusion, diversity, and equity mean to you? As a Board of Education member, how would you promote and ensure these values are upheld for all students?
Thank you for repeating. So to me, DEI right now is a hot button topic, and it raises a lot of questions and comments. I'm going to tell you what it means to me. Equity is giving each learner what they need to thrive. What one person needs, another person might not. Some child might need 10, 15, 20 extra minutes taking an exam. Somebody else can finish it 15 minutes earlier. I needed you to repeat the question to me to hear it again. We all learn differently. Inclusion in the realm of this is including everybody, including all families in our district, all community members, going to, the north side of town, going to the south side of town, talking to people in the Lincoln corridor. It's including everybody in what is happening in our schools. To me, DEI is belonging. I believe students learn best when they feel like they belong. I belong here. It means character, characters in literature and in textbooks and in all sorts of learning materials look like the students, sound like the students. It's somebody that they can identify with. It's celebrating the culture and staff and leveraging the nonprofits and all the amazing organizations we have here in the district. Programs like No Place for Hate. I know from teaching that kids learn best when they feel supported and recognized and they feel like they belong. Our schools, our buses, our fields, our teams, and classrooms, excuse me, should all be places where everybody belongs.
Thank you. Mr. Seam?
Like everyone has said, DEI is a hot button right now. You know, it's this long struggle that we've had in this country to be humane, to be just, to be right with everyone, but that isn't actually what happens in practice. That isn't what happens systemically. And so you come up with these terms and policies that bureaucracies and districts are supposed to uphold, but, you know, aren't upheld all the time. You know it because you have these disparities in graduation, you have disparities in reading levels, you have disparities in employment. So, and when things get the first thing that we start to point fingers at is, oh, these acronyms, these DEI, these type of programs mean that we're hiring people that are mediocre, that are not merit-based. The idea that if you are hiring people that are representative of your population, that are representative of your student body, that somehow means, which usually means you're gonna hire more blacks. DEI is code for black. When it's being used derogatorily. When it's for benefits, DEI is well known to have benefited white women more than any other groups. So we need to understand that it's a very complex term, it's very complex isms that we deal with, but we can just be humane and be right and not fold when we hear these terms and speak to it. We have particular groups who are equating the DEI practice and saying that we need to get rid of them. And if we do have the DEI, that somehow mediocre DEI hires are the reason for an increase in anti-Semitism. That's why Claudine Gay was let go. That was the push. We gotta really speak to that, because everybody's talking that we wanna be DEI focused and we're diverse, and yet we're gonna allow that kind of conversation to happen? We can't do that. We have to speak to it and we have to be able to dialogue. Thank you.
Okay, last question of the night, and we'll start with Mr. Singletary. Many community members have expressed concern about spending on non-mandated transportation services, such as busing for students who live close to school or for private and religious schools, especially given the current financial climate. Do the candidates acknowledge this concern, and do they plan to address it?
Relating to transportation, we have to understand that this is one of the main costs that's been increasing within our district. I think before the superintendent provided his recommendation to basically adjust the transportation process within New Rochelle, it was increasing over 20% a year. With that being said, within the existing framework of transportation, parents that live within a mile or less do not have busing. I know that as I am one of those parents. And there's also, parents who send their kids outside the school district, which have that option. As I stated before, looking at the budget, we really need to look at the numbers. I've heard questions relating to buses being unoccupied. I really want to look and understand, where exactly are those buses that are underutilized? I do not have knowledge at this time whether or not it relates to individuals who are busing their children out of our community, but I do want to look at the data. I do understand that one thing that we need to do is, could we change the narrative relating to New Rochelle? Right now, when it comes to the RFP, one of the reasons why some individuals do not submit a request, it's because New Rochelle has the reputation of not paying the bill. Another thing is we haven't been creative in how we go forth with our request for proposal. I know individuals, I have neighbors who specifically told me in other towns in Westchester of things we can do. I would recommend putting together a think tank of some of the people we have in New Rochelle. We have a lot of smart individuals in New Rochelle who understand how to work forward with requests for proposals and basically adjust our process so that we can have more competition in our bidding process so that we can provide transportation that's needed for all New Rochelle. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
We have 1,600 students in New Rochelle as of last year that attend other schools. Some are out of the district, some are for special ed, some are going to private schools. New Rochelle provides transportation to all students in grades K through 5. Several years ago, we scaled back from grade 6 to grade 5. We're talking about families that choose to live in New Rochelle. They're making their homes here, they're paying property taxes, they're part of our neighborhoods and our communities. I keep hearing in these last few weeks, one New Rochelle, one New Rochelle. We are all residents of New Rochelle, whether your children are in the schools or not. I like the idea of being creative with the funding and putting out other proposals. There's only one bus company that's coming in to serve us. I work in a day camp. We have the same bus company, we have the same issues with the day camp that we're seeing here in the district, and my question is why? How can we get creative in our busing? I understand the changes that are coming for next year are creating hardships for many parents, and I empathize with it. I do applaud the creativity and the thinking behind it to continue busing all of our children. I think a solution is bringing in a think tank, bringing as many people in as possible to help solve this problem.
Thank you. Ms. DeSeem?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Always make me put my glasses back on. Many community members have expressed concern about spending on non-mandated transportation services, such as busing for students who live close to school or for private and religious schools, especially given the current financial climate. Do the candidates acknowledge this concern, and do they plan to address it?
So yeah, that's a concern that a lot of people have been talking about, especially since the main issue that has been brought to us is the busing is so expensive, we don't have a choice, and it is an issue. And we're hearing that we're spending a lot of money on this out-of-district busing, and we've been asking, can we see the numbers? That's exactly the point. We don't have that information. How much does it cost us to bus kids out of district? You're supposed to provide transportation between 1.5 miles and to 10 miles, and I even hear that we're paying for busing that's over 10 miles. How much does that cost us? We talked about just now busing for only K through 5. That isn't accurate. We're busing all of our kids because the other ones take public buses, but those buses, many of them have been allowed to have free transportation if they're eligible. We did that a couple of years ago, never ever talking about how are we paying for it. I asked the question, they never answered us, right? So this is one of my biggest issues with the budget. Since last year, our superintendent, who a lot of people think are transparent, has been saying that we need to stagger our buses, and that's where we're going to get savings. But it hasn't been laid out. Exactly this. Where is the data? How much are we paying for these out of district? How much are we paying for in district? How much usage? Are the kids really getting on these buses? Because I see a lot of buses empty in the morning. Many people see a lot of buses empty. Are we effectively using our buses so that we could provide transportation, but do it in an economically way, as well as, is it time for us to have our own busing, our own bus drivers, our own aides. We would provide jobs for people in the city.
That's time. Thank
We
you.
want the analysis. Thank you.
Ms. Jacob.
This has become, I think, an issue in discussions this year because of the busing changes being made for the public schools and some of the other changes happening. But I would encourage us not to view everything as a trade. So it's not one for the other. And I think in your question, you used the word mandated. So one question I would first have is really diving into some of the legal language from our state education law to understand what is mandated, because I understand there is some verbiage that may require that if you provide busing for students at the 1.5 marker, you may need to provide for non-public school busing at that same level, right? So it's not under the 1.5, but it's above the 1.5 marker. So I'd like to understand those rules a bit more and where we are going beyond the rules and extending beyond the rules. But just at a little bit more of a philosophical level as a society of who we are as a community, why we pay taxes, I think it's a fundamental point that as a community, this is sort of a compact of residents who live here. And even when you age out of the school system for your children, you still pay taxes. So there are a large number of families that are moving here that may be using different schools or may need to use different schools. And I think that's an unknown sometimes as a parent. And with that, they're paying a share of taxes to this community that we are using. And I would just encourage us not to use it, to view this so much as a trade, but as something we are also doing for the broader community when we talk about all of our students. Finally, just on the point of how can we be creative, the busing story isn't great because I also understand New York State has a law where buses will have to become electric. So it's like not a great story overall, and we really do need to think creatively around how we're gonna afford everything or lobby to prolong some of those changes. But if we're thinking about changes for one, if we're thinking about changes in the future, we can have that conversation for the entire community.
Thank you, Ms. Jacob. All right, so now we're going to begin with closing statements. The candidates will have 3 minutes for their closing statements. And Ms. Jacob, we're going to begin with you. No, that's okay. Take your time.
Thank you for your time this evening. New Rochelle stands at a crossroads. We face significant fiscal challenges with difficult decisions ahead about resources, staffing, and programming. We continue to see persistent achievement gaps among our student populations. But when I do look at our community, I don't see just insurmountable problems. I see possibility, and I see a community that wants to discuss this and work together. I see a community with a proud history of confronting inequity. I see dedicated educators who show up every day to inspire our children and love this community and this district. I see parents and guardians who want the very best for their families, want to support the schools, and want to work with the schools. I see taxpayers who understand that strong schools make a stronger city, but are also asking for accountability. The challenges before us require both passion and precision. They demand both advocacy and analysis. As your board member, I will bring my legal training, my analytical skills, and my parental perspective to every decision. I will ask the tough questions, examine the data, and always center the needs of our children. If you've met me throughout this process or engaging tonight, just listening, I know this is not a two-way conversation, hopefully you've seen that I have the ability to engage in conversation, listen, and be persuaded. A school board member takes on one of the most important citizen responsibilities, overseeing the education of our community's youth while managing a very large budget, this year approximately $360 million. I promise to approach this position as I do in my role as a mother and as an attorney, with commitment, honesty, passion, and perseverance. I'm Ilana Jacob, and I ask for your vote on May 20th. Let's build a stronger, more responsive school system that truly serves every family in New Rochelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jacob. Mr. Singletary?
If elected, you're getting a professional accountant who understands budgeting, setting strategic goals, as well as understanding that there is more support that's needed to our teachers, staff, and administrators to achieve those goals. Given the fiscal crisis we're in, that skill is not only unique, but actually truly needed for our board. Let's be clear, with my professional training, I will be an asset to the board. But I'm really here because I believe in our teachers, I believe in our administrators, and I believe in the staff across all 10 schools in our district. And most of all, I'm committed to quality education to all. I've been involved in our school district I've been involved and attended school board meetings over the past 9 years. And within that, I understand what's needed to be an effective member of our board. I understand our board is made up of 9 individuals. We do not make decisions individually. We make decisions collectively. Why do I say that? Because with my leadership style, I operate as I3K, intelligence, integrity, and intensity. But most of all, kindness. I believe in working hard and being nice. I say that because I believe if given the opportunity, I will not only be a board member, but I will be a role model for our students within our communities. I believe in doing so, I have a high standard. We all have a high standard to operate with integrity on how we lead and how we operate within our city. I believe in New Rochelle. I believe in New Rochelle being strong. Give me the opportunity to work for you and help us get out of this fiscal crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
Thank you, everyone, for being here. For those watching us on the live stream, we all really appreciate your support. The disparities we've discussed tonight didn't happen overnight, and they're not going to be solved with quick fixes and promises. They're a product of systemic inequities, patterns of resource allocation, discipline practices, opportunity gaps that have shaped generation after generation of students here in New Rochelle. I know that we can look at our challenges. I know some of these problems seem insurmountable. We have a massive budget deficit that's forcing very difficult choices. The achievement gaps have gone on for generations that need to be closed. Post-pandemic learning loss is widening existing divides. I see something different. I see what happens in classrooms every day. I see small moments of breakthrough and connection that don't make it into board meetings. I see teachers who stay late, who are reaching out to families and their students. They're helping struggling readers, and the principal reaching out to get carpools. I see parents working multiple jobs and still making time to check in on homework. And I see students who face enormous obstacles, yet show up every morning ready to try again. I also understand these issues personally. 4 years ago, when my daughter was seeking treatment in Massachusetts, it was Mr. Hildenbrand and superintendent who called me personally to check in on us. Hey, how are you doing? That level of compassion and care is what makes New Rochelle so special. It's who we are as a community. New Rochelle High School helped us when we had nowhere else to turn. That same spirit of showing up for each other guides my volunteer work with families. Parents call me and text me in the middle of the night when their child is experiencing suicidal thoughts and feelings. I'm the person on the other end of that line, not because it's easy, it's the hardest work. But these are our community members, and it means being there for each other in the darkest moments. The stakes can't be higher, and we're in a dark moment right now. In my 25 years of teaching, I've seen how quickly a child can disengage when we fail them. And I've witnessed how 1 year of inadequate support can derail an educational journey. New Rochelle, we can do this. Not with platitudes, not with posturing, with expertise, with hard work, unwavering commitment, and the power of community and listening to each other and being here for each other. I asked for your vote because I don't have all the answers, but I've spent my life asking questions and listening to people. And together, I know we could build the school system that our children deserve.
Thank you. Ms. Dasim?
So Miriam Desim, I am hoping with your vote that I will be on one of those seats to better represent you so that you will hear and understand exactly what's going on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the rhetoric of all the nice words because that's what we get all the time, and then they get on the board and they say nothing. They approve everything, and we are no more informed, and we continue to go down the same road. The Board of Ed didn't have to approve this budget. Everybody talked about transportation just now and pretty much said that we don't have all the data on transportation. Pretty much said that earlier that we are more informed and it's transparent, but we don't have data that's as simple as how much does it cost for us to bus the kids that are out of district? It's not that we shouldn't do it, right? How much is it costing us? How much is it costing us to not efficiently use the bus? Are we efficiently using the bus? How much is it costing us to have this outside service that we are beholden to that is not allowing us to do anything that's creative? Like, we can use minivans for smaller areas that we own. We can do that, but we haven't done any of that analysis. But everybody's going to vote for the budget. But we don't have that data. How are we voting for the budget? With me, you're going to understand exactly what I understand. If I don't understand it, I'm not voting for it. I wouldn't have voted for it on March 20th. I wouldn't have voted for it on May 6th. And I'm not going to vote for it on May 20th because we don't have the information to do what we need to do to stop the waste and to move forward and once and for all make correct decisions for all of our kids. So those are some of the things that I think we need to think about. The other thing is we had a budget meeting with the superintendent, one of the last ones with the Lincoln attendance zone. So we've only laid off 54 teachers out of the 193 teachers that we were supposed to lay off. That's good news. How much saving is that? $4 million, he said. Okay? Then we saved $1.9 million because the charter school isn't coming in anymore. So we used one of that $1.9 million to hire back 9 teachers. Wait a minute. We're trying to save $22 million. You just told me we only saved $4 million with letting go 54 teachers. So why didn't we let go of more? Not that I want more. I'm trying to understand this math. And now you already hiring another 9. Where's the $17 million that we're missing? Where's that coming from? So we had that meeting May 8th. They're going to get back to me. That's the kind of information you're going to know and understand with me on the board. We're not going to just brush over it and keep going and hope for the best. Hope the state gives us money. So the other thing is
Ms. Dasim, that's time.
No violence in the classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank all of our candidates for sharing your passion and vision, and to everyone that joined us tonight, thank you. Your engagement is what strengthens our schools and community. So stay informed, stay involved, and don't forget to vote on May 20th. Everyone have a great evening. Thank you very much.